What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Let's Talk Movies podcast. I'm your host, Brian Drolet, and today on the show, I have another good friend of mine, a filmmaker, a writer, a director, most recently a book author. Please help me welcome Christopher Livingston.
How you doing, Bri?
I'm good. I see you got your director's beard going.
I have my director's beard going. I thought about shaving before you came by, but you get those red marks and stuff, and I thought that's not going to be a good look.
Wouldn't be a good look, you know? Instead, we got the nice cloudy white beard. I like it. I like the white hair looks good on you.
I dyed it this color.
Oh, okay, great.
It's for the seasons, for Christmas.
Everything
right?
in Hollywood is smoke and mirrors. Okay, you can't even believe the man's facial hair. Well, thanks for joining me on the Let's Talk Movies podcast, where I'm sure you can guess we talk movies.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's a coincidence.
Yeah. So I want to learn about you. Tell the people watching at home, what is your background with movies? I always like to start with, what's your earliest memory of like having the thought, wow, I want to make movies when I get older. I want to be involved in that.
Well, to be honest, I really didn't think that it was even something I could possibly do. My first love was music. I started writing songs when I was a teenager. My father was president of Capitol Records back in the 60s. He signed the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Frank Sinatra.
His father signed the Beatles and Frank Sinatra. I mean, are you kidding me?
So, music was always something that was sort of pushed on me. My dad, always said, you got to practice the piano, and I had friends up the street, and they all had motorcycles, and I'd hear them ring going up and down the street, and I'd have to sit in there and play, and I was just dying to get outside. But it turned out to be a very good thing, and I started writing songs when I was a teenager, and then my father, he wrote a book based on his experience in the music industry. It was called Ronnie Finkelhoff Superstar, and it was basically the premise of Hannah Montana, long before Hannah Montana was ever made. And it got optioned by Warner Brothers, Zanuck and Brown, two big producers at the time. They did Jaws and The Sting, optioned it, and it was going to be made into a feature film. And this was right around the time that I was in college and starting to write songs. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take some of the titles out of the book, and I'm going to write some songs. I figured if this thing ever gets made into a movie, maybe I could get a song in a film. So I started writing the songs, and then I was going to school in Connecticut, and I got Lyme disease. And Lyme disease is my school was right near Old Lyme, Connecticut, which is where the disease got its name. You get bit by a tick, and I was sick for the entire summer. I was starting to work in the mailroom at William Morris.
William Morris, for those that don't know, is one of the biggest agencies for creatives in the Hollywood industry. So this is like a huge deal to be interning there.
So I was working for about 2 weeks, and all of a sudden I got sick. I had to take some days off, and I went to sleep one night, and my heart was like doing flip-flops, and something was wrong, and I was having trouble catching my breath. And so my mom said, you got to go see the doctor. So the next day I went. He said, he gave me an EKG, and he said something's wrong, something's way off. So I went to see a heart specialist the next day, and he said if I had seen your EKG the day before, I would have given you a pacemaker and put you in the hospital. So I had to quit William Morris, and I literally had to go to bed for 6 weeks.
Wow.
For the summer. And I had nothing to do. And so I took my dad's screenplay that he'd written for Zanuck and Brown, and I said, I read it and thought, I see opportunities here that I think could make it better. So
this is just your instinct. You hadn't been studying this.
No.
Okay.
But I obviously love movies, and that was sort of a dream in the far recesses of my mind, but never really thought it as realistic. So
it's funny that your father signed people like the Beatles or Frank Sinatra, and you're still like, making movies, that's not realistic though. I mean, you would think coming from that background, you're like, I can do anything, this is easy.
I came online very slowly with my awareness of the world.
Yeah, since it was your dad, you probably didn't even realize what a big deal that was when you were younger.
Well, you know, my parents, they never talked about themselves. I never knew anything about my parents. I learned everything about my parents from other people. So I remember I went up the street. There was this family up the street. These are the ones with the motorcycles, and they had, you know, all these kids up there. And we were listening to the Partridge Family one day, and we were all jumping on the couch and dancing to the music. And you know, the oldest brother comes in and says, you know, Chris's dad signed the Beatles, and I'm like, who?
Oh my goodness.
And so he's like, yeah. So and I was like, I had no idea who they were. So he put them on the radio. That he put on the stereo. He put on Hard Day's Night, and everybody starts getting excited and bouncing around, and they're all really impressed. And all I'm thinking the whole time is, I wish my dad had signed the Partridge Family.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, I didn't really know. I kind of came. People told me things. I learned along the way. But anyway, I'd never had any realistic idea that I could make a movie. And so I sat down that summer and I rewrote my dad's script.
Wow. And did he know you were doing
Yeah,
that?
he said I could. I asked him, I said, would you be okay if I did that?
Okay.
So he said, yeah. So, and keep in mind, this is before there was even computers. So I was like, you know, I wrote it in the margins and then I would type it. I actually typed it up, you know, along the way as I was changing things. And so eventually I finished and he liked what I did. And he said, I'm going to give this to Zanuck and Brown. And I'm like, well, okay. And by the way, I had to, you know, quit the William Morris, obviously, for the summer. So Zanuck and Brown liked what I did. And they said, we're going to go with your version of it.
Whoa, no way.
You know, I in my summer break in college, you know, I'd started off with a mailroom job at the William Morris Agency, and suddenly I had, you know, a potential credit on a script that was optioned by Zanuck and Brown. So I thought that was pretty cool and
very cool.
Very excited. And then eventually, you know, as in Hollywood, this happens all the time.
So I'm sorry, you said it was optioned, right? Is that what you just said?
Yes, it was optioned. Warner Brothers.
Because they might not know what that means is when something's optioned, people pay you to basically own the rights to produce your movies. So if you're a writer and a script gets optioned, it's a very exciting thing. Still doesn't mean it's going to get made, but it means there's a good chance and there's a company putting hard money down for your script.
And by the way, when they optioned that, my dad actually got quite a substantial option. I think times have changed now. You know, people are very chintzy with option money. But at the time, he got quite a substantial option, which even would be huge today. But eventually, the project didn't pan out, and it went on turnaround, and we got the rights back to it. It's something I still would like to make. This is like a dream of mine. But what that did was that it inspired me, because all of a sudden there was, you know, like I kind of got the bug. It bit me.
Yeah.
I thought,
well, not the tick this time.
Not the tick.
Oh, see what I did there?
You did. So a friend of mine, John Turteltaub, who's actually a very successful film director. He did, you know, with Nicolas Cage, the
Treasure?
Yeah, National Treasure movies.
Oh, he did those movies?
Yes, he did.
He actually
while
came
you
to
were
the
sleeping.
premiere of our film, right? Didn't he?
He did. He came to the premiere of Be Like Trees.
Be Like Trees, the movie I mentioned on episode 1. Chris and I directed that movie, and the gentleman he's talking about now came to the premiere and said, our film that we made on just an iPhone was the future of filmmaking. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. Go on.
So anyway, he had gone to film school. He was a year ahead of me, and he had gone to USC film school. And so that was the first time I'd ever even heard of film school. So I was like, that sounds interesting. And I was getting, you know, towards the end of college. And I applied to USC, NYU, and to UCLA. Those are like the three top. I think Columbia was the fourth. They were like considered the top 4 graduate film schools. And secretly, I wanted to go to NYU because I'd grown up in Los Angeles, and I just thought, you know,
grass is greener on the other side of the country.
Well, I wanted to experience New York.
Yeah,
I figured that would be good for me. So anyway, I applied to all 3. I did not hear back from UCLA. I think they lost my application or something happened. But I did not get into USC, and I got into NYU. And interestingly, at the time, NYU, they were one of the few schools that actually asked for creative material. And I had no creative material to provide except for music. Well, actually, I had the script, but it was my father's script that I had just done a rewrite on. So it wasn't like, it was hard for me to like, but I sent in all my music, and I said I wanted to do musicals. And I figured, they like to take a different spectrum of people. Who the hell is going to apply to NYU Film School where Martin Scorsese is like, teaching a class that says they want to do musicals? So I got in and was shocked and thrilled. And so I started off at school. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And the first year is all about teaching you how to tell a story with pictures, the visuals. Show, don't tell. And you do 3 shorts your first year. The first one's silent, second one's to a piece of music, and the third one you're allowed, very limited sound. You can dub, but no live sound, all black and white. And they also, the first year of film school when I went, they don't do this anymore, they cut 20% of the first year class. So it was very cutthroat, very competitive, and it was nerve-wracking. And I had this great teacher, Roberta Hodis, who is kind of a legend in the film industry. She was a script supervisor, way back in the day. I think she, like very substantial films. She was kind of a legendary teacher, and I was the last class that she taught, which was wonderful. And Roberta, I don't know why, because there was nothing that I was bringing to the table at the time that would make me stand out, but there was something that she liked about me. And we kind of clicked, and at the end of the first year, I got, back in. And
you have to get in again.
You have to. Well, you don't have to resubmit. Once they just have to be. They cut 20% of the class.
Really?
Yeah.
That's got to be heartbreaking to get in, spend your freshman year, and then just get cut. It's like sports.
Right.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I made the cut, and that was when I decided. That was the first time I decided, because the first year I was kind of like, songwriting's my first love. I'm doing this because I got in, I'm out of college. What else am I going to be doing except getting a job? This is great. I'm looking forward to it. But I didn't take it seriously enough. And like I said, I managed to get back in, but it was my second year of NYU that I really said, okay, I want to take advantage of this opportunity. Now, your second year film at NYU is they only do one film for the whole year. It's like a 20-minute short with live sound, color, 16 millimeter, all in film.
And this is also before the digital computer age, so.
We literally spliced our films with a splicer and film and a Steenbeck machine.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, that year was important to me. I was like, I want to make a really good movie. So I came up with a cute idea for a story that to me was, had a good comic premise, and it had a beginning, middle, and an end in my mind. And it was about a kid who, it was about a nerdy guy who works in a Manhattan, advertisement agency, and his older brother's got this wise-ass kid who's like 13, and the nerdy uncle is sort of pushed and bullied into taking the 13-year-old for a week while he goes off to vacation in Europe. Nerdy uncle's got a crush on a girl at the office. This wisecracking kid comes into his life, helps him get the girl at the office. Nerdy uncle teaches the kid that he's not as stupid as his dad keeps telling him he is. And in the process, they form a friendship, and at the end, nerd gets the girl, and they have to say goodbye. So it had a beginning, middle, and end. Had a nice comic premise, which is that kid knows more about sex than an adult. And I wrote a first draft, and I read it, and I didn't like it. I knew it was there was something there, but I just didn't know how to write a script. And I realized that having worked on my father's script, I just embellished and added, but I didn't know how to start from scratch and build, especially something with a comedic premise. So I had been fielding headshots. We used to put ads in Backstage magazine. I would get a stack this high at NYU for shorts. I mean, it was amazing how many actors there are out there that want to, be in film. And the way they did is you take something out of a hat and they pick a date. So you have 1 week to shoot. So you have to meet, everything has to get organized and produced up to that date. So about a few weeks before I was going to shoot, I was making this realization that I didn't love my script. And I'd worked so hard. I had done everything I could to be successful at school that year. And I literally got down on my hands and knees and I prayed. And I don't usually pray. But I said, I need help. I said, I've done everything I know how to do and I need a helping hand. So the next day I got a headshot in the mail, like one last headshot. This was like just kind of trickled in at the end. I didn't even open it. I just left it there. And a couple days later, I was like, I gotta open this headshot. So I opened it, and there was this guy, this picture of this guy, and he had these big, thick Coke bottle glasses, spiked hairdo, polka dot, bow tie, and like this toothy grin. He literally looked like a cartoon character. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta call this guy, to play the lead in the film. So I called him. I'd already booked all my auditions, and we started talking. And for some reason, I don't know why I said this, he asked me what the script was about, and I told him. He said, oh, it sounds funny, it sounds cute. And I said, well, to be honest with you, I think, it could be better.
He said it sounds cute? That adjective. I heard you say cute. Right? A lot of cute adjectives being dropped. I didn't want to call it out the first time he said he wanted to write a cute story. We're men here, okay? We say adorable, not cute. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so he thinks your cute script is cute.
Yes.
Sorry, go on.
So anyway, I told him, I don't know why, this is somebody who's going to come audition for me, and I shouldn't be saying this to that person, but I said, I think it could be better. And he said, well, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I'm a hell of a comedy writer. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So we talked, and I said, come on in, and I scheduled him at the very end of the audition. So he comes in, it's freezing, it's like February in New York, and everybody's wearing stuff when they come in, all these coats, and he didn't take his off. And I'm just thinking, well, that's a little weird. So I had everybody do a monologue. He gets up and does this monologue, and he starts talking about how his parents messed him up as a kid. And it wasn't funny. And I'm thinking, oh, damn, because I was kind of hoping that there was something going on here. And then as he's talking and telling him about how his parents screwed him up, he starts taking off his coat. And underneath it, he's wearing a dress. He's got a little granny bag, and he's got a string of pearls.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, and all of a sudden, the monologue clicked. It was hilarious.
Oh, nice.
So we talked afterwards, and, we got to end up getting together, and we ended up rewriting my script. His name was Jaffe Cohen. He's actually an Emmy-nominated writer at this point. He's one of the creators of Feud, the one about Joan Crawford and Bette Davis.
Okay.
So anyway, Jaffe and I started writing. We rewrote this movie, The Travel Agent, was what it was called. And it wasn't an advertising agency, it was a travel agency.
And that became your first feature film that you produced?
No, that was a short.
Oh, okay.
And that
led to your first.
Then that led to the next year. I decided, so at NYU, you're supposed to do another final year film. That's your thesis. And I was, you're supposed to be 20 to 30 minutes. And I decided, let's go for a feature.
Wow.
So we ended up shooting a film called Chicken of the Sea. And it was about a Jewish college professor. Jaffe's kind of he's Woody Allen-esque. He's kind of a gay Woody Allen, if I had to describe him in a sentence. And he played the Jewish college professor, and he brings a black student he falls in love with home to meet his family for Passover. So it was a kind of a New York Jewish interracial comedy, and it won some awards. We definitely we got one of the school's directing awards, or I did, and some other, I can't remember, but I remember the directing. And so that kind of started me on my way. And Jaffe and I started writing. We were writing all kinds of stuff. We wrote a script called Ask Roz, which was a television pilot, which ended up being packaged by the William Morris Agency.
Oh, there you go.
So but I was on the street. I saw. I don't know if people remember Katherine Hellman. She was the red hair woman that was on Who's the Boss. She was on Soap. It was an old.
Oh yeah,
sitcom.
I remember the mom on Who's the Boss.
Right.
Yeah.
So she I saw her on the street, and I literally stopped her and just said, I have no idea if you're open to reading something, but I said, my partner and I, we just wrote a sitcom pilot for a mature woman. Would you be interested? She said, I'd love to read it.
Didn't you also once chase down Fabio on the street?
I did. And that's a great story. And it ties in with you, too.
Yeah. He chased down Fabio on the street when you were in college, right? Or
Well, okay, we'll jump into that. I can come back.
yeah. Okay. Sorry to jump ahead. It's
No,
just
Fabio,
I'm hearing you chase down
Fabio,
people.
Catherine Hellman. Who's more? What are we more interested in?
I think they want to hear about Fabio personally, but
right.
you know, no offense to Catherine.
Okay,
Great lady.
So my next feature was something called Hit and Runway, and I was, and this is how I met Hoyt Richards, who was somebody else you've interviewed. And somebody we worked
him
with
last
together.
episode, exactly.
Right. So I was driving my car. We needed for one of the roles. We needed a gun-wielding fashion model. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm driving in my car, and all of a sudden I see this van with the roof cut off with the Hollywood tours, and they're stopped in the middle of the intersection, and they're all looking in this direction. I'm like, with their cameras, and I'm like, what the hell? I look over, and there's Fabio driving like a convertible Rolls Royce. And he's like posing and stopping in the middle of the intersection and waving to them. They're all going crazy. And I'm thinking, okay, Fabio would be perfect for this gun-wielding fashion model. He's kind of like got an accent like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like we needed this, character. So I spun around and started chasing him down. And I pulled up next to him at a light, and I said, roll down that window. And he rolled it down. He looked at me like who the hell is this guy? And I said, Fabio, I said, I'm making this feature film. I think you'd be great in this part. I said, it's like a gun-wielding fashion model. He's actually gay, but and that was like, I could just see the eyes glaze over at that point. He was like, and he's like, you talk to my manager. So anyway.
And then he got hit in the face with a bird. It was crazy, no?
Well, that actually comes in too. So anyway, that was nothing. I tried calling the manager. No one ever picked up. They never responded, or they didn't answer the voicemails. So I ended up going to New York and casting Hoyt Richards, who played the gun-wielding fashion model. Hoyt had a huge career as a fashion model. He was considered the first male supermodel. So we made the movie. Turns out, I didn't know this, Hoyt's friends with Fabio.
True story, folks. True story.
So we had the premiere of Hit and Runway at the LA Film Festival, and Hoyt invites Fabio. Okay.
What are the odds of that?
So anyway, this is right after he got hit in the face by the bird, the goose, and it was his first public outing was my screening.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. See, I was just making that bird joke because I know he got hit in the face by a bird, but I didn't realize it was so close in proximity to this.
So he came to the screening, and I never said a word to him.
Oh, really?
No.
So he had no clue that
No
this
clue.
was even...
To this day, until he maybe watches this.
Oh my gosh.
But this is the final irony, which is crazy, is that we, years later, we did this movie called Dumbbells. And Brian wrote it with Hoyt, and they brought me in and to direct. And Brian ended up collaborating with me in that.
And we casted Fabio to be in the movie.
And we cast Fabio to be in the movie. And the final kicker is that we had my first movie that ever had a billboard in Hollywood on Santa Monica Boulevard overlooking everything was of Fabio. And it was a picture of Fabio, and it was something about,
for your consideration, best actor of the year. It was a joke, obviously. But yeah, a lot of people saw that billboard, and what an amazing story when you think like you chasing him down in Manhattan for your movie. He ends up going to that movie premiere, and then years later ends up being directed by you in another movie. So it just shows you, if you see an actor you want, chase them down. If you don't get them then, you'll get them eventually. And by the way, Fabio, one of the nicest people, such a pleasure to work with, so kind, and a chatty Cathy. You have dinner with that guy, you're going to be there for 9 hours, I'm telling you. But a really great guy, wonderful person. It seems like you have a lot of magical things, whether it's the Beatles, whether it's Fabio. Your mother's actually a very popular actress in one of the most iconic films of all time, right? Sunset Boulevard.
So my mom was an actress. She was in Sunset Boulevard. She played Betty Schaefer. She was the love interest of William Holden. And she's also done a number of Disney films. She did movies, 4 films with William Holden. She did a movie with Bing Crosby, John Wayne. she's had an interesting career.
And you didn't think movies was a possibility as a kid. Who is this guy? My mom's a huge movie star. My father sang Sinatra. But I could never make it in the entertainment business. How silly of me to think that.
But it's interesting, my mom actually just wrote her memoirs.
Oh, cool.
And it just came out. You can get it for Christmas. I don't know when this is going to
air. Let them know. Let them know. This is going to come out in a week or so.
It's called A Front Row Seat, and it covers her whole life story, the old Hollywood system, coming to Hollywood, being discovered, signed by Paramount, doing Sunset Boulevard. Also, she pulled from her first husband was Alan Lerner of Lerner and Lowe, who wrote My Fair Lady. So she covers a whole bunch of stuff with Alan Lerner and the creation of My Fair Lady, his Broadways, Camelot, Gigi, and which is a film, and some of his other big musicals. But she also pulled from my father's memoirs. My father, started at Capitol Records. He created Bozo the Clown.
That's my favorite fact ever, that your dad created Bozo the Clown. And fun fact, any film that I've ever written or made, or pretty much anything I've been a part of, I include the word bozo somewhere. And I've always loved that word I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. And Seinfeld was always like, why do they say Bozo the Clown? Are we going to mix him up with Bozo the orthodontist? I think just Bozo says it all. But I've always loved that word, and so it's so crazy that your father invented Bozo the Clown. I mean, remarkable lineage that you're a part of.
Yeah, he started at Capitol, and he was hired to do children's records. He kind of finagled his way in, and the first thing he did was create an album called Bozo with the Circus, and that was the birth of Bozo the Clown. And he did more children's albums, then went into the A&R department. And he was the person that actually, there was something called the King Cole Trio. And Nat King Cole was a part of that. He was a piano player. And my father thought, he heard his voice and said, you could be a solo artist. And he encouraged, and finally got Nat to agree to put out a single. And Nat crossed the color barrier. He was the first black artist that actually started being played on mainstream white radio, and some interesting stories there about my father taking Nat to the Brown Derby in Hollywood and some of the issues that he had to deal with racially. He moved on. He ended up then leaving Capitol at some point, going to NBC. He created Bonanza, the television series, the Cowboys. And then he went back to Capitol and had his heyday, as president of Capitol Records.
Wow.
So all that's in the book too.
Unbelievable. Well, make sure you go get his mom's book. To wind down, I want to ask you a couple just short answers, okay? Best movie you've seen this year, what is it?
I'm glad you asked me this year, because if you asked me last year, I wouldn't be able to even think of a movie. I enjoyed The Fabelmans.
Okay, I haven't seen that one yet. That's the Steven Spielberg story.
But it's personal, because it's also, it's about a filmmaker kind of discovering the camera and
you
and
can
the
relate
power.
to it.
I could relate to it.
What was the worst movie you saw this year?
Well, I can tell you the worst movie I saw last year.
Okay.
Power of the Dog. Oh.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Oh.
Apparently, it wasn't very powerful.
It was well received. It had a lot of reception by the Academy. It was one of the worst movies I've seen in my life.
What movie are you most looking forward to that's not out yet?
I want to see the James Cameron
Avatar 2.
Avatar 2.
That's everybody's answer right now, for good reason. Comes out this weekend.
I'm kind of looking forward to seeing The Whale. I keep hearing about
oh yeah,
his
Brendan
performance.
Fraser.
Yeah,
he's apparently phenomenal.
Yeah, The Banshees was pretty good. That was interesting.
Okay.
That was Colin Farrell. Yes.
I'm not sure yet.
And then what did I just see? Graham took me to something. My son Graham is, by the way, is completely into film, like old school, kind of film snob about it. He would go to the New Beverly and see, it's owned by Quentin Tarantino, and they only show film prints. I'm blanking out. But there was another good one.
All right, let me ask you this, okay? And we're going to end on this. What is your favorite movie of all time?
Can't answer.
Can't answer? Can't give me one?
can give you lots.
Just give me one of your favorite movies of all time. Doesn't have to be the one, but what's one of your favorite movies of all time?
Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest, really?
Yes.
In 2 sentences, tell them why.
It's brilliant. It's funny. It's got heart.
It's with Tim Allen, right?
Yes. In fact, this is an interesting little footnote. You know David Mamet, the writer?
I've heard of him, yeah.
Okay, well, he did Glengarry Glen Ross. He said there were 4 perfect movies in the history of Hollywood. I don't remember all 4. Godfather was one of them. Galaxy Quest was another.
Well, you guys have heard it here first. From the Beatles to Frank Sinatra to Bozo the Clown, down to Galaxy Quest. This has been Chris Livingston. Thank you so much. Go get his mom's memoir. Thanks for sharing about
Brian.
yourself.
Thank you.
And yeah, if there's anything you want to say, this is your moment.
Go buy a front row seat. You want to read something that is a total page turner that will give you a complete window into old Hollywood and the history of Capitol Records and Broadway and everything else. Also political stuff about, she had very interesting stories about John F. Kennedy. So if you're interested, check out the book.
Where can they buy the book?
You can get it on Amazon. It's in bookstores, but Amazon.
What's the name of it?
A Front Row Seat.
All right.
By Nancy Olson Livingston.
All right, great. Thank you, Chris. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Let's Talk Movies.